Hi, everyone. My name is Kristen Trailer. For my advice project, I read an article in the New York Times that was called uh, Our Favorite Relationship Advice of 2024 so far. It was written by Jancy Dunn and Catherine Pearson and was published in July of last year. The article covers 6 pieces of relationship advice for romantic relationships and centers around themes of conflict management and relational satisfaction. Um, Through my research, I've discovered that the advice is generally good and healthy, but I do think that it's a little oversimplified. The authors offer specific advice for how to give a good apology, which they describe in easy steps that a person can follow that are created by a researcher, communications researcher that they cite. Um, the steps focus on giving really explicit apology that centers the other person and your uh, conversations, feelings, and their needs and experiences rather than your own. If you're giving the one giving the apology, um, I for this project I also read a piece of scholarship that centered around exploring how apologies work. It was called Forgive and Forget. And in that article, researchers Pavisa Sheldon and Mary Grace Anthony talked about how the type of apology or strategy that you might use to communicate forgiveness um, is going to depend upon the severity of the transgression, which is something that I felt like the authors in the New York Times article didn't really talk about. The apology advice that they gave was more of like a blanket assessment rather than something that you would that was suggested to be used during a more severe wrongdoing or less severe wrongdoing. And in my research, I found that wrongdoing and the severity of that is really something that matters a lot in how you're supposed to handle an apology or conflict in your relationship. Um, so I do think that that could be a little too specific to apply in every single situation or every single conflict in a relationship. Um, Beyond that, there were some other pieces of advice in the article that suggested spending time together through reading stuff aloud together and communicating about sex really explicitly and specifically, and about finances, kind of talking about finances in a more playful way and making dreams about how you would spend money together, which are all things that I think our textbook would note as contributing to relational satisfaction through spending time together and just communicating with one another. Um, the final piece of the article, uh, or the final recommendation in the article, kind of stuck out to me. It returns to that theme of conflict management and specifically addresses uh, how couples can work through conflict about uh, household responsibilities and chores. And the article suggests that people focus on the function of their homes rather than appearances. While I do think that this advice can be helpful, I think it can neglect the concept of inequalities in domestic labor between men and women in a heterosexual relationship. Um, the research article, one of the ones that I read for my paper, is called Integrative Theory of the Division of Domestic Labor. And in that, researchers note that men and women seem to have different patterns of cleaning, where men tend to clean when something looks like it needs to be cleaned, whereas women tend to establish routines around cleaning in their home. And this can lead to women having a lot of the cleaning burden in their home. And this advice that the article gives may contribute to inequalities in the division of labor, domestic labor at home. But even with this, I think this piece of advice is provides some suggestions that can be helpful to people who are navigating these inequalities in their home, um, so that they can positively reframe and help kind of make their homes work better for them. So while I do think the advice in this article can be somewhat oversimplified, it does appear to be something that, or all of the pieces of advice tend to be something that is healthy and generally is something that seems to be good advice based off what researchers have to say. Thank you for your time. This completes my presentation.